Hello everyone, and thanks for joining our today's Hangout on Air. My name is Jan Zubina, and I'm working in Dublin as an account manager and a yield management specialist. Sitting next to me is my colleague Emer. Hi, Emer.
Hi, Jan. Hi, my name is Emer, and I work on our DFP product for EMEA here at the Dublin HQ.
Today's topic is dedicated to ad serving, and we will also touch briefly basics of yield management. Basically, we're hoping to answer questions like what is an ad server and how it can help you achieve your goals as a publisher. Specifically, we will have a look at Google's solution, which is called DoubleClick for Publisher, or DFP for short. Before we start, we would like to apologize to those of you who tried to join last week, but we've unfortunately run into some unforeseen complications and had to postpone the Hangout to today. Going to the agenda. Today, we have three major points that we would like to cover. First, Emer will present to you what is an ad server. How do you know you need one? Basically, what is the thing that the ad serving is supposed to do for you? In the second part, we both will look into the overview of DFP. What is its DFP's value proposition? And in the last stage, I will try to present you the most important opportunities within DFP, how to get to know those, how to uncover those opportunities. This brings us to the first stage, and Emer, you have the word.
Yes, thank you. So let's start at the beginning. Sorry, we'll leave the slides on because it goes through those things. So let's start in how can you understand if you need an ad server or not. So let's begin with what is an ad server. So an ad server essentially is a tool that can manage your inventory and help you segment this inventory on your page. It is extremely useful if you have multiple ad sales channels and that you have massive amounts of inventory that you just find it's too difficult to be swapping in and out tags on a regular basis whenever you want to make a campaign change. What an ad server can do here is pretty much streamline this process and make it extremely easy for you to put multiple campaigns on, manage your direct sales, and manage any other third-party ad servers or ad networks, that you're using. Our solution, of course, is DoubleClick for Publishers, and this is our ad server that's on the market today. So let me just go through a little bit step-by-step on why you might need an ad server again. First one is if you sell ads directly to your advertisers. So this is where you have direct campaigns that you have multiple advertisers that are working with you. I can just only imagine that every time that you change a campaign or you want to swap a new advertiser in, you need to go to the trouble of swapping out the tags. An ad server will cease this problem for you because all you need to do is swap the tags out within the tool, not on the page. Secondly, if you're using multiple ad networks, I'm sure it's quite confusing to see where each ad network is serving on which page and at which segment. What an ad server can do here, it can streamline that process so you can decide which ad network can show at what time, what day, what section, what audience, and what category. It really is a fantastic way of streamlining your business. And finally, if you are using house ads and you need to kind of direct your traffic to other parts of your site, an ad server can help you here. You can traffic or navigate your users to certain parts of your site that you want them to maybe click convert. This is especially useful for e-commerce sites like I said in this example. And finally, but not least, is to control where your AdSense show on your site. So I'm sure many of you guys have AdSense highly populated across your site, and maybe you're working with maybe direct advertisers that sometimes you need to pause AdSense, put the direct ad on, or vice versa. The ad server will help you control where AdSense is showing, just like it will help you with your campaigns and your other multiple ad networks. So what does a website look like without DFP? So like I mentioned, you have multiple, let's say, sources of ads that are coming on your site. You have your direct ads, you have your house, you have your other ad networks, and you've AdSense. Currently at the moment, it's a trafficker's nightmare when you decide, hey guys, I want to put a new campaign on. We need to swap this tag out, put in the new creative, a new tag. And I can just imagine how long the process can be, and also by changing the tag at a at a very let's say usual time, it can leave open for mistakes. So what DFP can do here to help you is that rather than having multiple ad tags on your site from different providers, you just have ad tags coming from DFP, and all the control is within DFP itself. So this means you can control your direct ads, you can control your house ads, you can control your third-party networks, and you can control your AdSense. It means it's a dream for your trafficker, as they don't have to keep swapping, or your technical team, depending on who needs to do what, to swap out the tags every time that you change a new campaign or change a tag. DFP is a one-time only where you put in all your tags, and all the control then is left within the actual tool itself. No need to be changing any code on any pages. So the main benefits of DFP, like I mentioned, or I don't know if I've said it before, is that it'll manage all your inventory and sales in one platform. So DFP is an unusual ad server in the way that it can actually, it's a video ad server, it's a desktop ad server, it's a mobile ad server, and it's an app ad server. It will help you maximize your yield from multiple sales channels. So what I mean here is that it will help you gain better money for your inventory, essentially. Jan will actually go into this a little bit later, because we have a really cool feature that will help you with this. But it's a way that you can actually help yourself make sure that you're getting the best CPM for that part of your site at the right time. Forecasting. Well, I can assure that if you're using multiple different campaigns and multiple different advertisers and multiple different sources of revenue, wouldn't it be lovely to be able to forecast to see exactly when things will deliver and if they will deliver on time? Well, DFP can help you with this. We use a 30-day cookie that helps you forecast your campaigns to make sure that any impressions that you've put in the system will deliver on time. And if they don't, you can actually put in a preventative measure to make sure that you're not losing any money. And finally, we have multiple creative templates. This includes rich media formats on mobile and on tablet devices. We also offer video formats. Like I mentioned, this is a one server that fits all your platforms. So we do provide templates for those particular platforms. And finally, most importantly, I think, is that you'll have a centralized version of all your reporting in one system. This means no need to jump between different tools to actually create a report, see if actually things are working. You can see it all within DFP. So the next, I'm just going to jump into the overview of DFP offering. I know that you're already excited, and everyone, I'm sure you're really want to know more about the tool itself. I know we are excited about it.
Yes, we are.
So one of the key features of DFP is, like I mentioned at the very beginning, it's a very easy way to manage your inventory. We offer a type of inventory hierarchy to match your business. What I mean here is that we offer a way to group and segment your ad units together depending on the categories for your sites. How you do this is through using our placements feature. This means is that you can group multiple ad units together to make sure that they are contained in one placement with maybe a common theme. So when your traffickers are setting up a campaign afterwards, they don't need to add 20 ad units individually. They just need to add one placement. And like magic, you're targeting all your common theme ad units across your site. Another fantastic feature that we use here is our key value targeting. This is where you can actually be quite dynamic and granular on tag levels with key values. So it really is up to yourself how you want to use this particular targeting. It is really simple to create ad units within DFP. You simply navigate to our inventory tab. That's actually a static tab that never disappears, so you can always fall back. You simply click on then our plus new ad unit. And within this, then you create your particular ad unit. So here you choose your size and you choose your naming convention. You might see in our example there, we have a kind of a standard naming convention that we would advise you guys to follow, just so then everyone who's within DFP itself can see exactly what they're targeting and where it is on your site. So for example, we have an above the fold and also below the fold terminology used there. The beauty of DFP, and I think this is, again, I know I'm talking to a lot of traffickers here today when I say I'm trying to make your life easier, but I really am. And with DFP, when you're setting a campaign, when you're creating any campaign, you can do it all within one screen. This means you don't need to flip out of one screen to get details for another. Everything is in one easy flow. So you can start by setting your campaign. Then you continue with what we call our line items. So this is just kind of your targeting metrics for a particular campaign. You then set your delivery, and then you finally set your targeting, which is actually contained within a separate widget, which I'll go into a little bit later. But the main thing here is to note is that you don't have to flip from any screen. It's all within one stop. Quite easy, hey? One thing I just wanted to mention here, that within this simple screen, when you're setting your campaign, you have the ability to set your priorities within DFP. So in DFP, we have two main different types of priorities, which is our guaranteed and our non-guaranteed priorities. The guaranteed priorities are our sponsorship and standard campaign priority. And this then has an extra level of, let's say, prioritization, not to use the word too much, of high, normal, and low. And finally, then we have our non-guaranteed priorities, which include our network, our bulk, our price priority, ad exchange or AdSense, and house. These priorities will actually be delved into a little bit deeper later on, just with regards to how to optimize your yield. We just want to show here that you have the option to really choose how to manage and control how your ads are being delivered on site. As I mentioned, I think I'm jumping ahead of myself here in the slides. The highlight is used for our guaranteed reservations and our non-guaranteed reservations. The numbers just besides these particular priority levels is actually the importance. So anything above 12 is our guaranteed reservations, and they will be prioritized above our number 12s, whereas our house is actually at the lowest level. Going back into our targeting metrics from our one single screen, like I mentioned earlier, we have a really flexible targeting widget that kind of helps you when you're creating your campaign. Within this, you can actually set geolocation down to as granular as postal codes in certain countries and even TV regions. Also, any option that you choose will actually appear on the right-hand side, so you never forget what you've included in a particular campaign, or you'll also see how you're actually doing with that particular targeting metric. Again, you have the option to kind of copy targeting from particular campaigns to another. And that means that, let's say you're doing multiple similar campaigns and you want to use the same targeting across everything, you can copy and paste that particular functionality that you've saved already and use it across multiple other orders or campaigns. Like I mentioned earlier on, we've our custom key value targeting. This offers, again, more flexibility than what you would see normally in the geo targeting. So here you can fine tune the audience that you reach using your custom targeting. It allows, again, to add additional criteria. So for example, if you have particular audience or categories that you really want to chase, you can do that with this particular features. It doesn't, so just to kind of caveat this, DFP will never determine those criterias. It's actually yourselves that would do this. So again, it gives you the full flexibility to do exactly what you want to do with your audience. So one of the key things that maybe a lot of our publishers use this for is by using user registration data. And then it kind of specifies the demographic information on this as well with user interests. It's very simple. I say simple, but it's better in practice, I think. But you can do this through passing the information through a simple JavaScript tag. And then once you're live with the custom targeting, you're able to target your orders across the board. So once you've done it once, you can actually repeatedly use it across as many orders as you so wish. So I'll pass over to you.
Thanks, Eva, for the detailed explanation. We're getting further with another cool feature which is integrated into DFP, which is the forecasting tool. The forecasting tool becomes available after you've implemented the DFP tags onto your site into the source code. Now, the least amount of time that you need to have the DFP implemented is for 7 days. So basically, after 7 days of being implemented on the site, the DFP will be able to provide you the forecasting. However, it becomes much more accurate when the DFP tags have been on your site for at least 30 days or more. Now, as you can guess, the forecasting tool's purpose is to actually provide you the information whether or not you will be able to deliver your goals. You can answer questions like, can I book this line item? Will it reach the goal in time? Will it possibly impact any other line items? If you have a look at the slide, if you can put the slide on. Then on the slide, you will see a graph much like the one you're seeing right now, and it will give you following information. You can access the forecasting tool before you book the line item or even during its active status. Basically, you will see whether or not the line item has already delivered some of the impressions, which is the black graph. Then you will also see if there are how much and how many impressions are still available in your inventory. It is likely that if you book some lower priority line items, as Imre showed you a few slides back, then higher priority line items would be able to deliver the goal, but they might impact the lower priority line items. It may also happen that simply you will try to book a line item with targeting parameters for which you simply do not have enough inventory available. Both of those features are highly useful, and the DFP actually contains the forecasting tool by default, so it's immediately integrated into the ad server. This brings us to another important feature, which is quite similar to the forecasting, and that is reporting on your line items. Basically, once you've run some line items, they don't have to finish, but you can report on your network every single day, or even more if you need. And as you can see in here, the DFP is offering so-called query tool, which is the internal reporting system. As you can see, it's quite robust, and you can think of the query tool as a custom reporting where you can select the columns and rows as you need. At first, you typically select the dimensions, which would be the rows. And for every single dimension, you can select additional metrics that you want to see as columns. Then, whether or not you will use the additional metrics, you still have to select the primary metric that you will see. If you stay still for a while with the reporting allows you to create two types of reports. One is the report, which is a one-time report only that you, for example, need if you want to figure out how many impressions have you served at a particular day. Or you can create so-called queries. Queries are automated reports that can be sent to any email address that you see fit. This can be your own email address, or even the email address of your clients for which you are serving their creatives. I think the question was pretty straightforward, and there are very detailed videos in the DFP Help Center that can help you navigate through the query tool and how to set up a query or a simple report. This brings us to another feature which Imre mentioned already, and it's the dynamic allocation. The dynamic allocation, in a simple terms, is a network level mechanism which is designed to maximize your remnant inventory earnings. without actually compromising your direct sales, your reservations. Those you would obviously typically book as direct sales, and it's naturally that they have the highest priority because they typically bring in the highest amount of revenue. However, dynamic allocation can really help you maximize the revenue from remnant inventory, from unsold inventory that you might have. Typically, you would use AdSense and some other ad networks, but you can also have AdSense compete, or AdExchange if you're using one, to compete against your self-promotion. Basically, self-promotion in this case would be serving as a backup banner, which should be serving in case no ad network is able to give you a certain amount of CPM that you specified. In its very simple term, the dynamic allocation is working along the lines that DFP will check all the line items that are not inventory line items that you booked, and the DFP will look at the rate at which you book. Basically, the rate symbolizes the value for you as a CPM in most cases. Now, before the ad request is sent to an external ad source, the DFP will ask AdSense or AdExchange whether or not AdSense can give you higher CPM than you specified. So an example would be that if you have AdSense as network 1 and a secondary network, which on average gives you CPM of, let's say, 50 cents, then before the ad request is sent to the network 2, the external one, the DFP will ask AdSense whether or not it has an impression valued at 50 cents or higher. If yes, the AdSense will show. If no, then the ad request is sent to the external ad network. This, however, does not guarantee you that such an ad network will indeed give you the impression worth at 50 cents. The impression can be of any value, or there might not even be an impression at all. We will touch this subject slightly later. Now, as Emer mentioned, I will look at the prioritization of the line items again, but I will limit myself to line items of priority 12 and 12 to 16. Again, the higher the number, the lower the priority of line items is. As you can see, with the exception of house priority line items, all the, let's say, light green types of line items are at number 12. This means that all those line items are eligible for dynamic allocation, and only those. House priority line item is eligible for dynamic allocation as well, but only as the last resort. This brings us to the last stage, which are the opportunities within the DFP and how to find out which they are. On the next slide, we should be able to see the yield report. This is a rather basic but still quite useful report in the DFP, which provides you a top-level view of what's going on in your network. Typically, you would be running this on a daily basis, and you would see the data for the past 30 days, but you can adjust the date range as you see fit. The yield report would show you in a simple graph what's going on in your network. You would see that the graph symbolizes all the different line item types that you've seen just a slide back, and you can see how the absolute number of impressions, the impression share, the revenue, and the revenue share. If you are specifying obviously the revenue for the external line items times, which means all the line items which are not AdSense or AdExchange priority. The DFP, when you run it, you can drill down to from the higher level to the lower level. You can basically drill down from the network level down to the ad unit level, which is useful, for example, to uncovering hidden opportunities. You can figure out how come there are so many unfilled impressions on unit XYZ. How come that, let's say, certain ad units are showing so much of house priority line items? That can give you improvements, like you can resolve issues that you are not showing impressions at all, which means that you are potentially losing revenue. Or, for example, that you are showing backup banners in form of the house priority line item too much, which again is potentially an opportunity. The dynamic allocation, as I mentioned earlier, you can run the report on it too. And typically, you will need to take metrics which are associated with the dynamic allocation opportunities. In this report, you can actually see how many impressions are eligible, which means all the impressions that could potentially have been trafficked within the dynamic allocation. Then you see number of impressions which were competing in the dynamic allocation. You can think of it basically as an opportunity for AdSense to run. The number of impressions not competing is actually the number of impressions from which AdSense or AdExchange was prevented from competing with. Basically, our best practice is to allow AdSense to compete with for as much ad requests as it possibly can, because this can, on average, increase your eCPM by about 10% on earnings as well. This obviously depends on a given setup and can differ from from a publisher to publisher. But let's say on average, for an average publisher, we've seen 10% uplift in revenue and CPM. The two remaining metrics that you can see is the dynamic allocation saturation rate and dynamic allocation match rate. The saturation rate again is a percentage value that tells you in how many percent out of 100 AdSense was able to compete for an ad request. The dynamic allocation match rate tells you in how many cases AdSense was indeed able to capture to win the impression for its own. Now, why is the dynamic allocation important, and what are the best practices to set up line items with less than 100% fill rate? Suppose that the most frequent scenario is that we have publishers who are seeking to work with multiple ad sources. Now, if you only have, let's say, AdSense and one external ad source, the setup is fairly simple. Usually, we do recommend setting up the secondary ad network as a network priority line item with 100% goal, which means that 100% of ad requests are eligible for this network priority line item. Then, typically, we do recommend setting up the rate for the network priority line item at the rate which you can see in the third-party networks UI. Basically, you should check how this ad network, what is the ad network's real eCPM, how much are you actually getting out of it. You should set this up in the DFP settings, in the line item settings that DFP that you've seen before as the rate. And you can think of it as a minimum CPM against which AdSense is competing. And if the AdSense can actually meet this threshold, then AdSense will serve. Now, as I mentioned, the fact that the ad request is sent to a third-party ad network via DFP doesn't guarantee you that such an ad network will indeed be able to serve the impression, because it might happen that if you're working with, let's say, high-yield, low-coverage ad networks, then those ad networks might not be able to match your ad request. Therefore, otherwise, you might come across, this might end up as an unfilled impression. To prevent the unfilled impression, we also do recommend setting up passback in the third party ad network, so as to capture those impressions that otherwise would be unfilled. However, you should always think about passbacks as a, let's say, as a safety net. That should only happen when basically in terms of an emergency. Now, certain amount of passbacks is unavoidable, which is completely fine, but you should always seek to minimize the number of passbacks. The more complicated story is when you have multiple ad networks with which you want to work. And in that case, we do recommend, obviously, always setting up correct rates that reflect the reality on a given position for a given ad network. But we also do recommend setting up frequency cappings for given ad networks, because from your perspective as a publisher, it is not useful to send way too many ad requests to networks that cannot simply fulfill them. This goes back to those passback solution, because even if you can capture those impressions that otherwise would be unfilled, it still is a loss for you because of some other reasons which I will not get today. However, basically the optimum solution is for you to only give those external ad networks as much impressions as they can possibly handle, because this way you are maximizing the yield from all those impressions that you have typically available on a monthly basis. This concludes our today's presentation. I hope it was it was useful to you as a publisher. Now we know that this presentation was created was rather general in its terms because it was designed for publishers that are typically less complex and are, let's say, thinking about implementing an ad server and do not have extensive experience in the yield management. Obviously, we try to provide you the general best practices, but please use the discretion before implementing them because, again, those practices are for general publishing in mind, and your case might be specific.
And we have a couple of resources to help you get started. I think some of the links were presented there, but we'll circulate it afterwards, so then you can actually kick off by using the tool and kind of go through any of the online videos as well, in case we didn't go into too much detail on certain subjects that maybe you need a little bit more help. But we can also see that you have a couple of questions for us, and we'll just kind of go through those now. If you have any more questions, fire away. We're here for the next few minutes, so please use them to your advantage. I suppose I'll kick off with the top one. So we have a question that came in saying, can you use the same ad location to target different geolocations and countries? Yes, you actually can. So when we were going through the targeting widget, I don't know if it was clear on the screen, but you can actually select multiple regions for that particular campaign. So if we take a step back and go from the beginning when you're setting a campaign or creating a campaign within the tool, you actually would select multiple ad units for that particular campaign. And then when you navigate down to the location part of that, of the targeting within the widget, you can actually then choose multiple countries. So it's not a case of just choosing one and then having to create another campaign to do something similar in another country. You can actually create the one campaign and select multiple countries and locations within that. I hope that kind of answers your question. If we jump to the next question.
I think there's an interesting one from Celia. Apologies for mispronouncing your name. You can use in the line item settings, you can use both CPM and CPC model. And now I'm talking about the, let's say, redundant inventory line items priority, which means not AdSense, because if you link your DFP and AdSense for the purpose of creating AdSense priority line items, then you will not be able to set it up because it is automatically done for you. For, let's say, those third-party networks, or even for direct sales, you can use a CPC model, but be careful about it because, let's say, if the creative that you are showing to your users is, let's say, not interesting, not engaging, then obviously the users might not be clicking on it. And since the DFP would only be tracking the clicks actually for you, then it might actually result in that particular campaign to be showing a long time before you actually accrue enough of clicks for the campaign to actually end up. So really do mind about whether you're booking the campaign on a CPM or CPC model. Obviously, choose what's better for you, but typically publishers in the ad server are using the CPM model in most cases.
And if I can just add on something there as
Sure.
well to that particular question. Just remember that within DFP, when you're inputting your CPMs, this is manually done by yourself. So it really is up to you and how you want to price a particular campaign. DFP doesn't suggest or implement that pricing for you. It is you manually updating these figures. So just in the question where you said if you had to use a fixed price, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that because it really is up to yourself how you've sold that to your advertiser.
As a last comment, if you're trafficking direct sales, then for the direct sales, meaning those priority line items, sponsorship and standard, it doesn't really matter how high you set up the rate, because the DFP is actually ignoring the rates for the direct sales. It only takes them into consideration when you're trafficking line items of priority 12 to 16. So only in those cases, the dynamic allocation actually relies on you inputting correct rates for those line items.
Yeah. We have another question there on where do I see the revenue obtained from DFP. So briefly, like I mentioned, you actually manually put in the CPMs yourself. So you can actually see any revenue obtained through our reporting metrics. There's multiple reports that always will give you a revenue figure depending on the campaigns that you're choosing to run the report off.
Then there's a question, if I need to show ad in static on certain pages, could I do it with highest priority? I'm not entirely certain if I understand the question correctly, but I assume that you are trying to achieve an outcome where the ad is basically keeps on showing all the time. If that is the case, then you would have to set up a line item with the priority for sponsorship, and you would have to set up 100% of ad requests to be eligible for that particular line item. Now, keep in mind that if you set up only one line item for a given inventory at a 100% goal, then you will reach your goal. Basically, this ad will sit in there until the let's say the date range has ended, so until you reach the given date. Now, if you were to book another sponsorship priority line item with the same goal, which means 100% of eligible ad requests, then effectively you would be you'd be showing at 50% cases one line item. In other 50% of cases, you'll be showing the secondary line item. So you have to mind what line items you have booked at a given inventory.
The next question that we had here was, where would you find a beginner basic doc in French to use DFP? On our last slide there, I don't think it was presented long enough, but we have an excellent help center that actually is translated into multiple languages, and you will actually find all beginner docs or best practices on the help center in the language that you need. So I know French is definitely there, so you should be able to find our best practice docs there. And then I see there's one on the video saying, I have a problem with the video module that you can't validate a campaign video for mobile. It's saying that the campaign is stuck at ready. So actually this is something that comes up a little bit more frequently than you think. The reason why it's still stuck at ready is that it hasn't, the server hasn't given enough, let's say, fires or impressions to actually make the campaign valid. So this also happens on the display campaigns. So we require at least 30 impressions in order for the campaign to become active. And this is probably what's happening here with this particular campaign, is that maybe where you have the tag, it mightn't be live on that particular site. So it's just requiring the 30 impressions in order to get it activated. So if you just put it on a live site, you shouldn't have that issue. It should transform into an active campaign pretty much after the 30 impressions.
There's also a question from Ahmad who's asking why we can't choose cities when we target Palestine. Now, the detail level of targeting within DFP or possibly other Google services also depends on the local infrastructure. Sometimes it can happen that we simply do not have enough data that would allow us to make sure that campaigns are running with sufficient geolocation precision, and therefore we do not allow that service. Again, this is not something that we don't want to do. It's more a question of the technical possibilities that we have in a given region.
Just moving on to we've got a couple of questions on why the ad units cannot be deleted. So I don't know if you're familiar with a lot of Google products, but we never delete anything. It's kind of a funny thing, even in Gmail, our other products, nothing is deleted, but it can all be archived. I think the reason being is that you can remove it and archive it just in case it is a valuable ad unit that you might use a couple of months later. You can actually reactivate this particular ad unit. But just be rest assured though, when you archive a particular ad unit, it actually comes off your page. So you can create a view where you can only see your active ad units. You don't need to have the full list of all units, including archives. So it shouldn't be kind of a messy view as long as you're choosing to look at the active ad units within the UI.
Following that, there's a question about the difference between the worth of South African clicks versus the Bambanian clicks. Now, this is not related to ad serving, but to put it very simply, the different value of clicks really depends on the liquidity of the market, on the auction pressure on the market. If you have a lot of inventory, or let's say fewer advertisers, then it is likely that the CPC value is going to be lower for the market. Compared to a, let's say, market where there's a relatively scarce inventory available and very high auction pressure, then you can actually reach higher CPCs for a given region. It works pretty much as in a, let's say, normal auction. So if you go to an auction where they are auctioning something extremely pricey, then obviously the value at which they are selling it is going to be much higher than, let's say, compared to situations when they are auctioning, let's say, for example, used clothes or something like that.
And finally, I think is that the last. Oh, there's a couple of you. I'll jump in just again to the. We have a question on technical support. So you're asking that, other than the the help center resources and the videos that we have, is there anything that you can speak to for technical support? So what I would actually advise here is we do have a contact us button within our help centers that you can actually navigate your technical questions to. Now, it does sometimes go to a form, but also sometimes it goes to a support team, technical support team that can get back to you with an answer to your query. So we do try to capture everyone and help everyone as much as we can. So please do use the contact us button through the help center for that particular support. Oh yes, and we also have on our microsite where you would have logged in to view us in lovely Technicolor, you'd see that we have a feature request form. So just below our video, I'm looking over to my left because I'm being pointed towards where it is on the site, so apologies. But we have a feature request form that you can click on to actually get maybe technical support, because one of the features within DFP that Jan went through was to do with our dynamic allocation. And for that feature in particular, you do need to have your AdSense account linked to the DFP account. And how you guys can do this today is actually clicking on that feature request form, and this will actually be navigated to a technical team that will help you join those accounts together. So you can actually make full use of our dynamic allocation tool, which is really, really effective.
Then the last question for today is from Hussein, who's asking what is the difference between DFP free and DFP paid. The difference is obviously, as the name suggests, that.
I can.
This
is my
specialty of
this is my bread and butter here. So we do. That is true. We do have actually, if you can consider, 3 versions of DFP currently on the market. So we have our DFP free. We have our DFP paid, that Hussein mentioned there, but we also then have a kind of a more advanced module of DFP premium. Now, the difference between our DFP free and our DFP paid tool is there is nothing. There is absolutely no difference. The technology is exactly the same. There may be some small elements of a feature that might be a little bit different between the paid version and the free version, but I can assure you 98% of that particular tool is completely the same. Why we call it DFP paid is that after a certain volume of impressions, a rate card does kick in. So this means that you would have to pay for your display impressions after a certain number. So depending on the region that you're in, it averages between 150 million impressions that are free normally, and then you might have to pay after 150 if you go over that per month, or in other regions it's actually 200 million impressions. So again, depending on where you have your account, you may actually incur costs if you do traffic over 150 million impressions within the account. And just to be completely upfront here as well, is that we only charge for non-Google impressions. So if you are using our AdSense on your account, they actually go in for free. So you can use AdSense up to 1 billion or 2 billion on DFP and not get charged for anything. So it really is a fantastic tool to use here, especially if you're trying to keep your costs down.
Okay, guys, I think we're running out of time, so we're gonna have to end this session. Thanks a lot for joining. We really do hope that this session was useful for you. In case you are interested more in the DFP, please use the Help Center links that we provided in the presentation. If you are interested, let's say, in linking the DFP with the AdSense so that you can create AdSense or exchange priority line items, please reach out to your account representative or to the support. And I think this is pretty much everything for us for today.
Great. Thanks so much for your attention, guys. It was really great to speak to you this morning.
Thanks a lot and enjoy your day.
Bye.
Bye.